And last but not least, the final script we're going to be taking a look at here is the YouTube Plays Super Mario Odyssey script, otherwise known as Mixer Plays Super Mario Odyssey. We've got some interesting things going on here, of course, as always, with the path and file name. The folder is called TaskBot, because, everyone in the comments was like, oh, can you make a task for Mario Odyssey? Can you, record inputs and then play them back? And I was like, probably not, but I'll give it a shot. No, you can't. Of course you can't. But I made a folder and I called it TaskBot. Then I had this idea. It's like, hey, what if I did Twitch Plays Odyssey? And I was like, okay, I'll make twitchplays.py. Then I realized, wait, I have 5 followers on Twitch. I should do this on YouTube. And so it became YouTube Plays. But it's still called twitchplays.py. Because of course it is. And eventually I added Mixer support. And eventually I actually added Twitch support. But no one noticed. Because no one cares about my Twitch. And another interesting thing about this script is, I basically wrote it in a day. Like all of these scripts. I wrote it in a day. With very little care. And then that night, I launched the, alpha. And had people test it out. And I, made a few changes. And then I just launched it. And we just, went. And of course I made changes as we went along. I added Mixer support. I added the map voting system, I added the vote ban system, I added probably a bunch of things that I'm not even remembering, and I didn't test any of these changes, right? I just wrote them, and then I would bring the string down with my BRB testing things, or whatever I had, and I would just bring it back up with the changes.
As any good coder would.
Yeah, so that's called testing in production. When you're running an online service, which this technically is, you should really have some sort of testing environment, right? That's as close to identical as your main environment, but it's separate, right? And you can test changes there without affecting your production environment, which is what your users are using. I didn't do that, of course. I tested in production. And surprisingly, most of the time it worked. If you just make small changes. But, when it didn't work, then the stream would be down, and no one could play. And I had to frantically fix things. And I didn't have version control, so if I made a change that just completely broke, I couldn't undo. So we're probably going to see a lot of commented out code. We're going to see code, just bolted onto code in places it doesn't belong. And we're going to see a whole lot of imports. Right off the top, we've got a whole bunch of imports. Some of which are copied and pasted from the old ones. Some of which, a lot of them are just for, chatting, interfacing with those APIs for the chats and stuff. And for once, we don't use NumPy. It's still there, of course, but we apparently don't use it. Pygame's still sitting there doing something. Serial time, YouTube chat. It's pretty obvious. What do you think of the module?
Sounds important.
Yeah. Regular expressions, I'll probably use them at some point. OS, never used. Simple WebSocket server, so that's the interesting thing. Actually, I guess there is more code to look at, but it's less interesting. So the display, I wonder if I have it here still. If I can switch to it in OBS. So yeah, as you can see, it's a little broken because I changed my resolution. But there would be that list of commands off to the side. And that was basically just a web page that connected to a Python server that was basically a WebSocket server. And so it's send commands to this web page. And OBS has this built-in thing for displaying web pages. I think it uses WebKit. Random, we do some random stuff. And this is all just chat stuff and threads. None of that's interesting. So anyway, yeah, like I said, this had Twitch support at some point. So we have some library that makes a Twitch bot. You used to just be able to do Twitch chat interface stuff using IRC. And so when I made BitBot, so BitBot was my IRC bot that I used back in the day. And I was able to just use him on Twitch by coding up a simple IRC client. And that used to work. Maybe it still works, but I couldn't get it to work. Not with this. Maybe Twitch changed something at some point. So I found some guy's library that makes an asynchronous Twitch bot. And you just enter your credentials and the channel. Obviously, that's not a real password. I've removed that. Then this method, this asynchronous method, I've never written an asynchronous method in Python myself. This is boilerplate for either the Mixer bot or the YouTube bot. I'm guessing Mixer, but maybe we'll find out. So then after that stuff, we initialize some variables. We got valid commands, which is pretty self-explanatory. Maybe use an underscore or camel case there or something, but that's a perfectly fine variable. If you ask me, it could also be a set, really. It doesn't have to be a list. It's so small. It doesn't really matter. We've got a list of clients, a list of commands, our good old friends pressed, but now also last pressed. We have last, which equals now. We have next, which equals now. C timer, which is 0. Got our good friend Sir. Live chat ID for OAuth creds. I'm not sure what. Oh, I bet you're supposed to put something in here and it just. Anyway, that's clearly for the YouTube chat, or maybe that's for the Mixer chat and that's the YouTube chat.
Not that you'd want to have your variable names reflect that. Why not just, try and guess?
Yeah. Well, you'll see in this, whatever bot this is, eventually everything calls the process message method. Yeah. So eventually everything calls the process message method. And so that's at least good. We'll get there. Old B is 0. Law is false. That one is pretty self-explanatory. We had law and chaos. So that's just a Boolean. -%. Oh, that'll be for the map voting system, I bet. We have vote ban. It's probably a list of people that are vote banned. And that's an empty dict, right? Yeah, that's an empty dict. And last to vote ban. Again, typing in camel case would make this a bit easier to read, but it's still not that bad. And it's an empty string. And this code, so this code is indented with spaces, and this code is indented with spaces. And that's how you know I copied and pasted it, because I use tabs, like a civilized person. This code is all just boilerplate for the WebSocket server, and clients, which we initialized up here, is just a list of WebSocket clients. And so whenever we send a message, we send that to all the clients. I mean, really, we're only ever going to have one client, but, we might as well make it a list, so we can theoretically have more than one. Yeah, my voice feels nasally. Maybe it's...
I don't know what to tell you. My voice feels nasally.
Anyway, yeah, then we initialize that server. That's pretty self-explanatory. And then we've got this nice process message method, which is a real tongue twister. I mean, again, this should really have an underscore or a camel case or something, but it doesn't. Other than that, this is a decent method, right?
I've seen worse.
Right, because this script is taking commands from 3 different services, right? YouTube, Mixer, and technically Twitch. And, we don't care about the minutia of how those services actually work. All we care about is the actual message itself and its author. And so we've got other other methods elsewhere that, process those different services individually. We've got something somewhere that's handling YouTube inputs, we've got something somewhere that's handling Mixer inputs, and we've got something somewhere that's handling Twitch inputs. All of those feed into this process message method, and it just trims all the fat. We don't care about timestamps, we don't care about any of the other metadata that comes along with those. We don't care about how YouTube sends messages in batches, whereas Mixer has a stream. Actually, I think it might be the other way around. I remember one of them was really annoying, and it's probably YouTube, honestly, because YouTube sucks. YouTube's chat sucks, at the very least. But they all just feed into this process message method. And this does all the text parsing and stuff, and calls, presumably at some point, calls other methods. But we'll see. We'll go through it one line at a time. Sorry, I added this feature pretty late because people wanted to be able to type messages without accidentally triggering commands. So I said, hey, if you wrap your message in square brackets, it won't count. And it just returns instantly. But actually, I cheated a bit. I just checked to see if the message has a square bracket, either one, anywhere in it, and then it just returns. So you didn't actually have to close them, but most people did, because they didn't know that. Also, if you try to spam map, if you have more than one map command, I just completely ignore you. And if you have more than one vote ban command, I just completely ignore you. So then this is a big boy. Let's see what we got here. If author.lower in timeouts and timeout author.lower is greater than time.time. Okay, so basically if the author is timed out, right? Because timeouts is like a dict. So if the author is in that dict and their timeout, right, so this is when their timeout expires, right? This is when their timeout expires. And so if that hasn't happened yet, then, so yeah, we iterate over the clients. These are, again, the WebSocket clients. And we just send this message, right? And that message is just displayed. It's just a text box, basically. And it just appends it to the bottom of that text box and then just scrolls, so it's always on the screen. And it just says author is vote banned for however many more seconds. Something I didn't know, actually, and I learned this relatively recently, is that Python 3, at least has these fun format strings, so you can do stuff like this. Author is vote banned for however many more seconds, right? And you don't have to do any of this stuff. Like, you don't have to concatenate strings. You can just use fun format strings. And that's something I didn't know about, and that's cool. Python makes me happy.
I know.
And then we call server.serve once, and that's boilerplate for the WebSocket server. And then we return. We just ignore that guy. I mean, we tell him he's row banned, and then we ignore him. Anyway, then we split on the comma. That's how that worked, right? You could, if you had multiple commands, they were separated by commas, right? Because if you separated them with a space, that would be pressing multiple buttons simultaneously. But if you did comma, that would be in sequence. And so then we've got this commands, which is a list, and we append that with an array, or a list, excuse me, which I guess could be a tuple, but whatever. And that consists of the author and their first command. And if they have more than one command, then for thing in messages 1 to 8, so we have like 8 commands, more or less, that we can support. Then we append that to commands, but without the author. We have the author field be blank, basically. And so that way on the display, it wouldn't show the author. Like, it would show the author once, and then all the remaining commands. Maybe that logic shouldn't be here, but, like, it kind of works. I'm actually kind of okay with this system. This variable shouldn't be called thing, but also, like, it's used once. Like, it should be command, is what it should be. Oh God, look at what it's auto-completing. Actually, new command, new command. Okay. Then we have this respond method, which takes messages and chat ID. So you know what? I think this is for the YouTube chat. Because YouTube will give you, it won't give you one message at a time, it'll give you a batch of messages. And so you have to iterate over them. And so yeah, all we care about is the author and the actual message itself. Message.displayMessage. Really, we could just inline this. This is all this method does, is it just calls the process message method with these parameters, the message and the author. And that's it. And it does that for the entire batch of messages. And we don't care about the chat ID. That just has to be there in the signature. And obviously this commented out code shouldn't be here. But right. Because sometimes I would disable YouTube. And so I would just uncomment this and then comment this. And that's how we disabled YouTube. So that's the respond method. Then we have _handle_chat. That's probably just some boilerplate thing I copied and pasted. And that's probably for the mixer bot, I'm guessing. Right, because we have this thing. I'm guessing this is for the Twitch bot. And see, it literally just calls process message with the content and the author. And this, I think, is for the mixer bot. Right, because Mixer will at least give you messages, like, as soon as you receive them. It doesn't bunch them up. It doesn't batch them the way YouTube does. But it, like, gives you a list of tokens, like space delimited tokens, and then you just have to, like, concatenate them? Or is something like that? It's more complicated than it should be. And also it's in this giant JSON, I guess. JSON looking thing that you have to traverse through. Anyway, you do this nonsense boilerplate garbage, and you get the message, and then the author. Look, like, okay, you can't blame me for this. This is the Mixer API. Like, I don't know if this was written by... I think this was written by Mixer. And I think the package is still called, like, Beam or something, and it's on Microsoft's GitHub. But anyway...
I can blame you for using single quotes there, but double quotes everywhere else.
And I might have copied and pasted this, I don't know. But I can blame Microsoft for giving us a variable named data that then has an element named data.
True.
And I think that's the only element you care about, right? Because, look, here you could do data. Here you do data.
Yeah.
Like, why? Anyway, then it calls process message. And I guess this was originally in a try catch. So, you know, if there's an exception, we just print oops. And we just throw it out. So we don't care. Like, if this thing throws an exception every once in a while, who cares? It's not mission critical. You know, maybe we could log it better or something, but whatever. Then we've got some thread stuff. This is probably initializing the Twitch bot and the Mixer bot, I'm thinking. Like, this code should be better organized and commented, is basically the gist of it. Because, you know, there's a lot of boilerplate here for initializing third-party libraries for communicating with these services. And, like, there's not a whole lot I can do to make that prettier, but I can at least organize it and comment it, so looking back at it, I can better understand what it actually does. As it stands, this is just garbage. But it has to be there, right? Like, I can't just get rid of it. It's important. It's doing something. Anyway, we've got this giant try, finally. And that's where the rest of the code lives. At the end, of course, we close Pygame and Sir and F. F is not defined.
Ah.
I believe that's supposed to stand for file handler. I remember one time, because OBS has a thing where you can like display text on the screen, and you can read that text from a file, and you can update it in real time. So that's what I was trying to do to get the chat on the screen. Except that's not real time enough. It's too slow. So I couldn't use that. But that code's still there. I never got rid of it. Maybe if I was using an IDE, I would have seen, oh hey, FH isn't defined, I should get rid of this. But I wasn't, and so I didn't. And so it lives on. But yeah, the rest of the code is inside this giant try block. Chat equals create config. Chat, yeah, I don't know which chat. Chat events equals chat event handler.handle. Yeah, this is all boilerplate, but I don't know which boilerplate. I'm guessing it's YouTube.
Well, you've got a comment mentioning the Beam server there.
Oh, the Beam server. Okay, this is Mixer boilerplate then. Yeah, I copied and pasted these comments, clearly. When messages come in, just print them. That is clearly not what I'm doing. But you can see it's registering an event handler and is calling handle chat, which is the method that I wrote. We start some threads. We start the M thread and the T thread. What's the M thread? That's this. And the T thread. Oh, you know what? That probably stands for Mixer and Twitch. That makes sense. Yep. So yeah, we just start those threads. Made them daemons this time. So I think that makes them close when the application closes, which is actually what you want. And that prevents me from having to use that dumb variable thing that I did in the other one. Don't quote me on that though, because I'm not actually sure. Tornado. Do you like tornadoes?
Oh yes, I love them.
I don't know what tornado is. Oh look, FH is defined. But yeah, I don't think it's ever written to. Oh, and we print threaded, just for fun. I like that word, you know? Yeah, we open log.txt as, was that like append binary or something? But yeah, I don't think we ever actually write to this. Yeah, we open it and then we close it. And that's all. That's all we ever do with it. Chatobj.start, more boilerplate right there. And then we've got the rest of the code inside this while loop. So our good old friends XP and RP are back for the X and Y positions of the left analog stick, but now they're joined by buddies RXP and RYP. Can you guess what that stands for?
Resume experience and resume Y experience.
Exactly right. The right analog stick. Good old friend Mr. B is back. Repeated is a boolean of some sort. And to write is blank. New command is false. Actually, new command is false. And C timer minus equals 1. Oh, you know what? I think that's the cooldown for the capture button. That's what I'm guessing that is. Again, a more descriptive name would be quite helpful here. But fortunately, I at least remember that vaguely. Okay, so this loop is just executing constantly, right? So if len commands, so this is something that probably makes no sense. Wait, do I even have to do this? Okay, yeah, so that's kind of unnecessary, I think. So I'm just trying to see if the commands list is empty. And so I'm checking if len commands, because like 0 is falsy and anything else is truthy. But also an empty list is falsy, and a list with things in it is truthy. So I think, don't quote me on this, I think you can just get rid of that. If commands. And that reads a lot better, right? If there are commands. And next is less than time.time. So yeah, we'll be looking into that next. Yeah, we'll see next pop up in a little while. Anyway, message, we pop a command off the queue. So command is basically functioning as a queue here. We extract the author and the message, and then to ban. So if the message is a vote ban, then the first word of the message will be vote ban, of the command that is. The first word will be vote ban, and the second word will be whatever it is you want to vote ban. And so to get that, we split it on spaces, we get the last index, and we convert it to lowercase. Oh, and we only split it once, right? I don't know why I did -1. I just like reverse indexing. It's fun.
Wow, wasn't that magical?
Oh, you know what? It's cause, you know, if it's not a vote ban command, right? This array, or this list, might end up only being of length 1. And so, by doing this, we make sure we never get an index out of bounds exception without having to add an if. So that's some pretty clever coding there, if I do say so myself. I should maybe add a comment. Because also, most of the time, we just throw away this variable, right? Like, if it's not a vote ban, we just ignore this. So, there should probably be some sort of comment here explaining that. Or, you know, it should be, like, inside this if. This vote ban if, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that would probably make more sense, to just drag this whole thing down here. That might break something, I don't know. Then there's a regex here. I probably stole this off the internet because I never write regular expressions because they're complicated and confusing. This one's pretty straightforward though. I think it's just stripping punctuation, right?
That's what it looks like.
And then we also split the message on... Oh, you know what? We don't strip the punctuation. We replace it with a space, and then we split on that space. I think that's what's going on here. And so you could separate, right? You could use like any of these except the comma. The comma, and this also replaces multiple spaces with a single space. I think is what's happening because we have space star. That makes sense, right? That's the thing about regular expressions, especially ones that you didn't write, is going back to like they can be efficient and concise, but also pretty difficult to read sometimes. And also apparently this is redundant. Thanks, Bycharm. But now that just seems less clear now, because you have like space star, which I'm assuming is targeting just any number of spaces. But again, but then it has to have at least one of these, because that's a plus. Yeah, see, I don't like regex. It makes me sad. Anyway, this if statement here looks like it's handling the vote ban logic, right? If the length of the message is greater than 1, and the first word of the message is vote ban, and author is not last to vote ban, right? Because if you just spam vote ban, like, that won't work. I ignore you. You have to alternate at the very least. There has to be at least 2 people trying to vote ban. And I'm sure there are some people making alt accounts and whatever, but screw those people. So it's a pretty effective system at stopping people from just spamming vote ban. Right, that's the code that I just dragged here. Pressed equals empty array. I don't know why that's there. Yeah, we just append like a new line, like a paragraph break sort of thingy. To write is eventually going to go to the display. You know, it's going to get sent over the WebSocket connection. I love this if statement. This is a very good if statement, and I think it speaks for itself.
Very nice.
So yeah, then we append... This is just the standard message, author, vote ban, whatever. That's just trying to rewrite your command after having parsed it. And if... Okay, so yeah, here we have a bunch of magic numbers that should definitely be broken out into constants because I reuse them again and again. And so like and here as well, like every time I would tweak these numbers, I would have to go in and do some garbage. We have this vote ban dict, right, which would probably have a better name. So if the person you're trying to vote ban is in the vote ban, we increase their vote ban score, or whatever you want to call it, by 10. If they're not in it yet, though, then we just add them and give them a base score of 10. And if their vote ban score is greater than 100, so yeah, this should be called like vote ban score, right, or something like that. It's like vote ban is a very, very vague variable name. But if they get above 100 points, we cap them at 100. And right, it would show up as a percentage on the screen, right? I'm pretty sure. Yeah. It would show up like here. It would show up as a percentage. And so that's why it's 100. So maybe percentage would be a good name. Or something like that. So yeah, if it gets above 100, we cap it at 100. And if it's 100, and oh baby, you're in trouble. Right, so if it's a command, then we do this garbage. If it's not a command, we assume that it's a user, and we do this garbage. But I don't think that actually makes a difference, right? People were concerned, like, oh, this guy named himself A or something, and so we can't vote ban him because A is a command. Like, you still can vote ban him. It'll just be for less. Like, that's the only difference between vote banning people versus vote banning commands. Oh, wait, no, because if you had a guy named A and you vote banned A,
yeah,
that would vote ban the guy, but it would also vote ban the command.
Yeah.
That was the problem. And yeah, that was a problem. And I never solved it. Because there was a guy named ZL, I think was the thing. And is that? No, that's not why they banned ZL in the final segment, I don't think. But yeah, at some point there was like a guy named ZL, and everyone vote banned ZL without thinking. Sucks to be you. But yeah, this code is all like exactly identical. So this should really be broken out into methods or something, except we use the word user instead of the word command, and we have 6 minutes and 5 minutes instead of 30 minutes and 15 minutes. So yeah, commands were vote banned for less time than users, and these times changed rapidly. So basically, once you have successfully vote banned someone, whether it's a command or it's a person, this code is going to be identical. We reset their percentage, and if they have been vote banned previously, which means that their username is in the timeouts dict, then we vote ban them for 6 minutes. And so we set their timeout to time.time, that's now, plus 6 times 60, which is 6 minutes. Right, and that's for commands. If they're not in timeouts, that means this is the first time they've been vote banned, and we're slightly nicer to them. We give them 5 for, commands. And similarly for users, except it's different times. So yeah, this should really be broken out into methods, wouldn't you say?
Yes, I would say that.
Yeah. And see, like, if I were using an IDE, I'd have all these nice refactor things where I can just, like, yeah, extract a method. And, maybe I'd want to, like, break out variables and stuff. I'd almost certainly want to break out variables and stuff. But No, I was lazy and I just left this code in here. All expanded and stuff. Oh boy, and then we have these variables. Well, last to vote ban is quite obvious. Like, whoever just tried to vote ban cannot vote ban again. And so we save them there. And the new command is true, and actually new command is also true. Hopefully those will make sense by the time we reach the end. So anyway, that's the logic for vote banning. This else... Oh boy, there's a lot more code. A lot of this is all just straightforward stuff, though, that you've seen before. So hopefully this will be easy. Okay, so this else. Right, okay. So every like cycle, every time a new command comes in that isn't a vote ban, we go through all the people and commands and whatever in the vote ban list, and we decrease their vote ban score by a random amount between 0 and 14.
A random amount.
A random amount.
That sounds fair.
Well, I didn't want people to like try and figure out the system. You know, I wanted to have some air of mysteriosity to it. And so I figured, oh yeah, if I make it random.
But sometimes you just don't decrease their vote ban.
That's right.
Okay.
So yeah, I think a lot of people were annoyed by this because they'd be trying to vote ban someone and like, why is it not working? Why is it not working? Like their score is not going up because it could decrease by more than you increase it by. But I mean, if you're constantly spamming vote ban, right? Yeah, that'll work. But if one guy is constantly trying to spam vote ban, right? That's the gotcha. If you have one guy spamming vote ban, this if won't get executed, but this else will, right? Because author is not last to vote ban. This else will get executed. And so this guy will be trying to spam vote ban, but all it'll be doing is decreasing the vote ban score, right? Mm-hmm. And so really, if someone wanted to avoid getting vote banned, they could just spam vote ban themselves, and that would accomplish that effect. I don't know if anyone ever figured that out, but this system can definitely be gamed. Absolutely. Don't ask me to run an election.
Oh, I won't.
Good.
I would not trust the results.
Right, and so if it gets below 0, we cap it at 0. So we convert message to a set. That's probably just my lazy way of removing duplicates or something. Oh, right, and then there was this whole logic. This was like one of the last things I added during the alpha. Because like most buttons, right, if like up, for example, if you have a bunch of people spamming up, the assumption is that you want Mario to go up. That makes sense, right?
Yeah.
Like you don't want them to be pressing up repeatedly. You want them to be going up. But for jump specifically, and I think really Cappy, like the cat hat throw should be in here as well. But for jump specifically, I figured if you have a bunch of people spamming the jump button, the assumption is that Mario should be jumping repeatedly. But the way the code works, or the way the code worked at least, is that if you had a bunch of people spamming jump, the bot would just be holding the jump button. And that's not what you want. And so I had to add all this logic here. Was like, oh, if I get a jump command more than once in a row. So if the button just pressed is equal to the button last pressed. Wait. Okay, so... Wait, no, I'm confused. Okay, so if your command is identical to your previous command, if you spam the exact same thing twice in a row, that'll count as a repeated command. Or if you include the jump button, you know, either A or B counts as jump. But you mix up your commands. So you could do like up A and left A. Those will count as the same command. It'll trigger this flag. I remember not being completely satisfied with the solution, and I can see why. Because if you do just spam up, he'll like press up and then release it, right? At least we'll see. We'll see if that's actually what this does. And yeah, then we just save pressed and last pressed so that we can compare it here in the next go around. And then here's the logic. Here's some of the logic for the capture button. If capture and pressed and C timer is greater than -250. Oh, I remember this variable. We're gonna have to come back to this variable, but I'm pretty sure it's a negative number that counts up. And then it stops at 250. -250.
That makes perfect sense.
We'll see what we reset it to. Oh no. It counts down. Yeah, no. It's a number that starts at 0 and counts down. And once it reaches -250, then it's happy. But if it hasn't yet reached -250, you're not allowed to use the capture button. So you can only use the capture button every 250 whenever this ticks. Forever. Like cycles. That's dumb. Numbers should count up.
Yeah, usually.
Numbers should be positive whenever possible. This number is not. This number starts at 0 and counts down. Because then you have to have this greater than, right? And that's like backwards of how you'd think about it.
It actually looks like that number is 2 and counts down. If you look.
Oh, yeah. That's right. It doesn't reset to 0. It resets to 2. It starts at 2 and it counts down to negative 250. That is completely unnecessary and completely ridiculous. I think we can all agree. But anyway, basically, if you try to spam the capture button, but the timer has not yet expired, then we just remove the capture button from the list of commands. Right, so yeah, this was that thing I mentioned earlier, right? When you send a message, it adds it to that list with the author, with like your name and your command. But then if you have multiple commands, then it strips the author, right? So if we don't have an author, or rather if we do have an author, then we add a new line, so that's like the gap between the commands, and then we write the author name followed by a colon and a new line. And again, if I knew about Python format strings, I would do that here, but I didn't. Otherwise, we just do a single new line, and that's how you have like, multiple commands in a row. And then we say actually new command equals true. I don't know why. I don't know what that does. And we say last equals time.time, last equals now. That was the last command. The last command was now. And then there's the logic for the map vote system, and that's also random. It increments every time someone spams map. It increments by 25 plus some random number between 0 and 10. So anywhere from 25 to 35-ish. And if it's above 100, we cap it at 100. But if it's not above 100, then we remove map from the list of commands. And if the new command equals true, like, I'm sure these variables do something eventually. And then we write map percent, that you map 75% charged or whatever. And if it's above 100, then we get it 0. And so yeah, right. If we have reached 100 and map was impressed, then like map will still be impressed after this if. Otherwise it'll be removed, right? So this is basically just stripping map if we have not fulfilled the conditions. But if you're not spamming map, then we decrease the map charge by a random percentage between 0 and 10. Again, I want an air of mysteriosity to it.
Oh yes, of course.
And we cap that as well. Okay. So now we're going to get into some math pretty soon. I see math approaching. But anyway, for key and set pressed, if key invalid commands, and key in timeouts, and timeout key is greater than time.time. Okay, right. So yeah, this is if you try to use a command that's vote banned, it will remove that command and tell you that it's vote banned. So yeah, that's the vote banning system for commands there. And so that's why if you vote ban a guy named ZL, then it does not discriminate. Hello, it's future Pieman. It's Pieman from the future. Hello there. It's future Pieman. Pieman from like a couple weeks in the future from when I first recorded this. I'm realizing going back over this that I completely forgot to explain 3 lines here. 220, 221, and 222. And some of those are pretty important. So 220 is pretty straightforward. It's just if you try to press the capture button, but the C timer has not been reset to 2, right? Then we remove capture. But then the next variable is set to last plus 1 divided by the length of commands plus 1. And so like I said earlier, commands is basically a queue of incoming messages, and sometimes a bunch of messages will be added to the queue at once, whether that's through YouTube's batching or through someone just entering multiple commands separated by commas. We could just say, oh, as soon as a command comes in, we process it, and then boom. But then, with YouTube batching and with commas, that wouldn't really work. So we have this queue of commands, and then we dequeue commands, like one at a time. And so basically what this variable is doing is it's setting the time at which the next command will be processed, and it's doing that based off the length of the command queue. So the longer the queue, the more commands that are pending, the sooner the next command will be processed. That's a pretty elegant system. The only downside is people come up with, like codes, sequences of commands that they want to be able to input again and again, and because of this system, the timing element is not consistent there, which is a little bit of a bummer, but no one seemed to mind, so I was cool with it. Okay, future Pieman signing off. Anyway, then we have a bunch of if statements. These if statements are pretty much going to be all identical. Like, they're going to be all slightly different. So I don't even know if these are worth breaking out into a method, because they're all slightly different. Maybe some of them, even then, they're different variables. They're, doing a bunch of things. Okay, this is definitely dumb, though. The fact that they all have new command at the end. Mm-hmm. I think new command might be the flag to say, hey, I've actually accomplished something, print something to the screen. Because otherwise we'll just throw out. Anyway, right, so stop. Stop was one of people's favorite commands. If you include stop in your message, it just completely wipes everything else that you've tried to do, and just does nothing. I had fun finding Unicode characters that correspond to the switch buttons. But all of this is pretty self-explanatory. Up, down, left, right. Just print those Unicode arrows to the screen and set the XP and YP variables appropriately. And then similarly, we had the slight up, slight down, slight left, and slight right commands, and also the corresponding up, left, and up, right commands. I don't know if people ever used those, but they existed. And that just does the exact same thing, but with smaller numbers. And then, of course, we had the A button. You see, I found a Unicode character that's an A inside a circle, a B inside a circle, a Y inside a circle. Could not find a ZL inside a square, because, of course, that's not a Unicode character. But yeah, those do, just like we did before with the bit fields and stuff. The map, of course, we don't print out anything to the screen because we already did that earlier, right, when we were handling the map logic. Center? What? I forget which button this corresponds to. I think it's the R button. It just recenters the camera. So maybe I'd want to comment there or something because I don't know what that corresponds to. The capture button. I was really proud of finding this Unicode character that looks just like the capture button on the Switch. Maybe not exactly, but it's pretty darn close. No one ever commented on it.
It is very close.
Oh yeah, and then we have law mode and chaos mode. Those just set those variables. There's no voting system there or anything. It had the fun little camera icon. This was really fun because that's an emoji, and like it doesn't render as a full color emoji in PyCharm, but on the stream it sure did. And yeah, those just control the right stick. That's all super self-explanatory. And so yeah, that's where those flags actually come in. If new command and actually new command. Those have been getting set all this time. Then we send messages to the WebSocket server and they get displayed on the screen. Specifically, the toWrite variable that we've been appending to all this time with all these ifs. And if we're in law mode, then, that's like the top-down mode. I got this idea from some YouTube video I saw. I forget who made it. Maybe was that Helix Snake? It might have been. But anyway, playing Odyssey top-down, it's pretty difficult. But it also means the camera isn't like constantly trying to rotate to like get behind his back. And so my thought was like, oh, that's a nice simple way to make this something reasonable to do. And so that just makes the right stick go up or down or whatever direction it's supposed to be. Okay, this is dumb.
So you just kind of do the same thing over and over again, but using the stick positions plus 128?
And that's just to center it. The difference is these are all 0, and then this one's actually Mr. B. So remember, repeated was up here from this logic.
Mm-hmm.
And so if we're like trying to press the same button at the same button multiple times in a row, first we let go of the button for like 4 cycles. And so obviously the way to do something 4 times is to just write it 4 times.
Yeah, of course. That's I think that's one of the rules of coding. It's do repeat yourself.
Yeah. This should be a loop, and this should be a method. That's, I think, pretty self-explanatory. And then yeah, ser.read is that same boilerplate from the volleybot, and then server.serve once serves the WebSocket server. And that, my friends, is it. That is the code that powers YouTube Plays Super Mario Odyssey. And as you can see, if you try to download this code and run your own live stream using this code, you're gonna have a bad time, okay? Like, I do not recommend anyone do that. I hope this has been at least something approximating educational experience for someone. Hopefully you've got an idea, like if you want to do something like this yourself, hopefully you have, some sort of jumping off point, like, oh, I can use that library, something like that. If you're learning programming, I'm hoping you look at this as an example of what not to do, and hopefully I provided some helpful advice about how to maybe make this code look a little nicer. That's all I've got for the time being. I hope you guys had a good time. Follow me on Twitter, subscribe, make the numbers go up, all that fun stuff. I'm a professional YouTuber. Bet you didn't know that. See you next time.